Hi, Dr. Flight here. This is a relatively short segment that is intended to describe the development phase of the new product development process. There are five very major phases in the new product development process, and what we should be coming out of is the concept evaluation phase. So once we hit this point, the company has a really big go, no-go decision to make, whether they should pursue a specific concept based on the concept test and the evaluations that they've received internally and externally regarding a product idea, and whether they should move that idea further into development. So what we know is that after the development phase, and in particular the design phase or design part of development, um, we actually put into the product 80 to 90% of the product's cost typically once we get through this stage. So up to this point, we probably haven't sunk a lot of cost into the actual product concept. From a relative perspective, the big cost from the design phase or the development phase is in the design and the development and the R&D and the prototyping and so on and so forth. So moving forward then, this short segment talks a little bit about the overview of the development phase and what that looks like moving forward. So up to this point, we have developed a concept for a product, and now we're moving out of the evaluation process for the concept and into a process where we're transitioning the actual idea into something physical or something in a process sense, if it's a service particularly, that actually produces some value for the customer. So we're making this transition into development, and we're actually developing the physical product. And it's important to just stop and think for a little bit that during the transition or during the development aspects of the product itself, there's a technical side of the development process where we have in an operations sense, we need to create the product. But then at the same time, there's a marketing side as well, where we're developing a marketing component. We're thinking about the brand, the name, where people will buy the product, the pricing, and so on and so forth. So while we're developing internally the actual product, we're also beginning to develop externally how the market will actually receive the particular product. Now, not everybody, of course, is a marketer, and so sometimes this subject matter is taught through the perspective of the marketer. And so this last point just stresses that marketers are especially, it's especially important that marketers are in tune with how the operations people function and how the process of the product is developed physically, and vice versa too. I mean, the product development team that's produced generally has people represented from the entire firm, not just the marketing area, of course. And so this should be happening all along. But the development phase or stage of the product development process is truly a dual step phase where we have physical development and marketing development done simultaneously. So why is this process needed? Why is the development phase needed in general? Well, first, quality assurance is a piece of the puzzle here where we want to be able to make sure that we can produce the product and we can meet the customer's needs through a quality perspective that we're held to internally, the quality standards that we set as a firm and that the customers are going to set externally in the marketplace. So that's an important aspect. Also, coordination, as we've already talked about. As we develop the product, the different elements of the firm have to begin to work together, as they do with all of our other products as well. So that needs to come together. Planning, and then finally improvement. So this is a big milestone step. To be able to move the product from merely an idea or a concept to something actually tangible, or something that can produce, where value can be seen, where value can be produced for the customer in the actual product. And then finally, the improvement process. As we develop products, this is a process, just like any other work process would be. And so we want to make improvements to the process that we're doing. And also, of course, to the product itself. So there's the physical improvement to the product, but then there's also the process improvement moving forward. So these aspects, or these thoughts about why they're needed, why the development phase is needed, and why we need to spend special attention to this, lead to outcomes that could be measurable in order to determine whether the products could be successful, or the process that we're working through is successful during the development phase specifically. So product quality, as we mentioned, is something that is measurable, and something that we can test tolerances, and we can gauge for the fit and the finish of the product. So quality, for all the different dimensions quality has, we can absolutely measure this, and we do all the time, of course, for service quality, and for physical goods as well. But that's an outcome that would come out of the development phase, and quality can be tested. Also, product costs. So during the development phase, we're costing out the product, and the process that we use to produce the product will produce a certain cost, as well as the raw materials. So part of our architecture and our development of the product has a component in it that focuses on our cost. Development time. So we talked about cycle time in the past, but how much time will it take to go from concept to the trial stage to ultimate commercialization? So that again is a process outcome that we can measure and use as a metric to determine how well our process of developing products is. And development time, or the development stage, is an area here that we do this. And a firm's development capability as well is another thing that we can think about measuring, and this speaks to the capacity the firm has to produce new products and services. So is the firm capable of developing new products, and how efficient are they at doing it? The more that this process of new product development is planned out, the better they'll become at this specific point. And this all comes together during the development phase, the development cycle. So, some of these steps, as we know, some firms skip through the development process, the new product development process, but developing the actual product physically, walking through the process steps if it's a service, those have to be done. There's no avoiding this. The company has to be able to do this, and so the development stage is really a time when everything comes to a head, and the product, it's a big go decision point if you're thinking about the fuzzy gate process moving forward. Okay, so the development process then, in the development stage, when we're thinking about what development is, from the physical development of the product, we think of it as being defined as having 5 steps. The planning part, system level design, detailed product design, testing, and then production ramp up. So in the planning and concept development stage, this is something that should probably be done by now. We've done our concept brainstorming, we've done our concept testing both internally and externally, and so this idea generation and evaluation have produced some form of an acceptable product concept. And from this, we have a general idea of what the form is going to be. We definitely know what the technology will be that we'll use to produce the product, and we'll definitely know what the customer need is. The form part, we should know generally what the form will be, what form the product will take. However, this may change a little bit as we do development work on the actual product and we do some testing later on. We may have to make some changes here or there to either reduce cost or maybe create more value or benefit for the customer. Now, that's one of the things that we're still doing during the development stage of the process. But generally, we know what we're going to produce in terms of the product. The next step then is system level design. When we think about system level design, we have something we call the product architecture, which thinks about taking the product, splitting it apart into modules or subsystems that can be produced simultaneously and then have the product assembled all at once. So that's something we're thinking about. We also think about the layout of the production line. So the assembly scheme, think about the operations of how the process will be to actually produce the product or service, and lay out a schematic at a big scale in terms of how that will happen. This could include a flow diagram of the production process. Okay, so that's system level, thinks of the bigger picture, then the product architecture that's involved with that. The design detail focuses on the product itself and thinking of the specific tolerances and quality assurances that the product will need to have, the size, how the fit and the finish will focus on the actual product itself. And again, this is an area where we may have to go back to the customer, get some feedback and make minor changes. Through our prototype testing stages, this design detail gets fleshed out, especially after the beta test. So this design detail gets worked on. I mentioned testing, so testing and refinement. We do some versions of the product. Sometimes they're final versions, sometimes they're just the mock-up version. And we gauge our customers' input on this, but also internally we test the product to make sure it meets our quality features, and go forward. And then finally we do some production. So we could ramp up production slowly. We could do just batches, so we could do batch work where we have part of the line working. Remember, when we launch the product, we don't need to have production at full capacity. We only need to have production meet the innovator's needs for the product in the marketplace. So if you think about the first phase of customers are your innovators, that's 2 to 5% of the marketplace, and so we don't need to have full production at that point in time. We may need to think about our distribution and whether we're doing a limited distribution or slow rollout distribution or a full online, full distribution of the product. But the quantity and volume that's produced, at least initially, doesn't need to be particularly huge. So anyways, this is the process of the development stage. And again, this is just a quick introduction to the development stage, just to lay the groundwork for why development is needed, and kind of its role and purpose and the measurability the development stage has in this whole process.